Welcome to today's deep dive. We have an incredibly fascinating stack of notes for you today.
We really do.
Yeah, we are pulling together what you might call, um, well, a completely unfiltered cheat sheet for a life well lived.
Right.
Our mission for this deep dive is to synthesize some rather blunt, counterintuitive truths
Yeah.
about your career, your wealth, relationships, and your overall resilience.
And the source material we are working from today comes from excerpts of Scott Galloway's book, The Algebra of Happiness.
Yes.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is absolutely not your standard fluffy self-help manual.
Not at all.
Galloway is synthesizing his observations not just from business, but from his own, spectacular successes and his failures.
And just to give you a sense of who we're dealing with here, Scott Galloway is a brand strategy professor at NYU's Stern School of Business. He's a serial entrepreneur.
Right.
But his path to get there was anything but traditional.
To put it mildly.
Yeah, we're talking about a guy who graduated with a 2.27 GPA. He got rejected from UCLA and literally talked his way in by writing an appeal letter stating that he would be installing shelving for the rest of his life if they didn't accept him.
Which is an amazing strategy.
Well, it actually worked.
Yeah.
And he went on to build and fail at multiple businesses. There's even a detail in the notes where one of the most successful venture capitalists in history warned his partners against investing in Galloway.
Because he considered him, quote, insane.
Exactly. Insane.
But they ended up investing anyway, and it actually did quite well.
Right.
But I think that sets the stage for the tone of this material. Galloway's advice often challenges those standard, feel-good narratives we are constantly fed about success.
He takes a highly analytical, almost brutal approach to auditing your life trajectory.
He really does.
So pull up a chair to this conversation. Whether you're prepping for a massive career pivot or you're simply trying to figure out why you feel so incredibly stressed out in your 30s, this deep dive is custom built for you.
It absolutely is.
Okay, let's unpack this. Starting with the early years of your career. Galloway takes an absolute sledgehammer to the modern concept of work-life balance in your youth.
He really challenges the standard advice here.
Yeah.
We hear so much today about the importance of self-care and avoiding burnout right out of the gate.
Right, take it easy, find yourself.
Exactly. But from his perspective, the slope of your career trajectory is largely and perhaps unfairly established in those first 5 years after graduation.
The first 5 years.
Yeah. He argues that if you want a steep economic trajectory, finding perfect balance in your 20s is a complete myth.
You essentially have to burn fuel.
Right.
He acknowledges the concept of struggle porn.
Yeah.
That toxic idea that you have to be absolutely miserable to be successful.
He says that's false.
Right. He says you can and should have rewarding moments. But he doesn't sugarcoat the reality. The world belongs to the fast, not just the big.
Meaning you have to hustle.
He writes about sacrificing his 20s and 30s, his marriage and his hair, just working relentlessly.
It's a massive upfront deposit of your time and energy to capture the compound interest of your career.
Wow, compound interest of your career. I like that.
It cost him heavily, but he argues it bought him the extraordinary balance and freedom he enjoys later in life.
Right.
And where you choose to burn that fuel matters immensely. Which brings us to a specific formula he lays out for economic velocity.
The formula.
Right. Credentials plus zip code equals money.
I love this part. He uses this fantastic Wimbledon analogy to explain the zip code variable.
It's so good.
He argues that big cities are like playing at Wimbledon. Even if you aren't Rafael Nadal, simply playing on the same court as him, immersing yourself in a dense supercity crowded with success, it forces you to improve your game.
Because you're surrounded by the best.
Exactly. He notes that 2/3 of economic growth over the next 50 years is going to cluster in these supercities.
The premise is that you have to physically place yourself where opportunity is dense.
Yep.
He actually claims that if you tell him your degree and your zip code, he can accurately estimate how much you'll make over the next decade.
That's wild.
And the advice for you listening is to do this while you are young. Getting credentialed and relocating to a major, highly competitive hub gets exponentially harder as you age and take on more responsibilities.
Because it's exhausting.
Yeah.
But here's where it gets really interesting. His take on that classic commencement speech advice to follow your passion.
Oh, yeah.
According to these notes, he believes that is terrible advice.
What's fascinating here is his rationale. He observes that the people who stand on stages telling you to follow your passion.
They're usually already rich.
Exactly. And
Okay.
ironically, they usually got rich doing something incredibly unglamorous.
Right, nobody starts their childhood passionate about tax law or B2B software sales.
Nobody.
Galloway's formula flips the script entirely. He suggests you find something you are merely good at.
Just good at.
Just good at. Then you put in the 10,000 hours of grueling practice to become truly great at it. And the economic and emotional rewards you receive from being great, the financial security, the admiration of your peers, the autonomy, that is what will ultimately make you passionate about the work.
Which translates directly into his philosophy on choosing an industry, which he calls boring is sexy.
Boring is sexy.
Yeah. If you view your career as an asset class, you want to invest your time where the returns are highest.
Makes sense.
He argues that if an industry is overwhelmingly cool, it becomes heavily saturated with human capital.
Meaning there are simply too many incredibly talented people fighting for the exact same jobs.
Precisely. And when an industry is flooded with eager talent, it drives down the risk-adjusted returns on your investment of time.
He uses examples like trying to work at Vogue, opening a trendy restaurant, or running a downtown music club.
Everyone wants to do those things.
Right, so the pay is often terrible and the hours are grueling. Instead, he points out where the truly wealthy families at a J.P. Morgan Alternative Investment Summit actually made their fortunes.
It wasn't in nightclubs.
No, it was in iron smelting, it was in insurance, it was in commercial pesticides. The profoundly boring stuff.
Because the ultimate goal isn't to have a cool job title to impress people at a dinner party.
Exactly.
And this raises an important question about separating the ends from the means, which he illustrates through a really compelling story about a college fraternity brother of his named David Carey.
Man, this story really forces you to pause and think.
It does.
So back at UCLA, David Carey was the publisher of the school paper. Galloway describes Carey as a guy who wore big glasses, looked 40 even when he was in college, and was in a very serious relationship.
Very straight-laced.
Very. Meanwhile, Galloway says he himself was running around with a ponytail, smoking pot, and rowing crew.
Right.
Fast forward a few decades, and David Carey becomes this massive, undeniable success in the publishing world, working at places like Condé Nast and Hearst.
And Galloway talks about visiting Carey in New York during the height of his career. They'd eat sushi in this stunning Frank Gehry-designed cafeteria right near Anna Wintour's office.
The pinnacle.
It was the absolute pinnacle of corporate glamour and success.
But the glamour isn't the point of the story. Later in their careers, when Carey is sitting at the very top as the president of Hearst magazines, he voluntarily steps down.
He walks away.
He walks away. And when Galloway asks him why, Carey says he wanted to spend his time helping young people and that he was, quote, sick of firing my friends.
That is a heavy realization.
Yeah.
It really highlights that Carey succeeded not just because of his relentless work ethic, but because of his underlying character. He never forgot the actual script of life.
Right. The prestigious career, the power, the beautiful cafeteria, that is all just the means.
The end goal is achieving economic security so you can foster meaningful relationships with your family and your friends.
It makes you stop and evaluate whether the title you are chasing is actually going to give you the life you want once you finally secure it.
It's a great audit.
And speaking of the life you want, that requires an entirely different understanding of what it means to be wealthy.
Let's shift into the math of wealth. Because Galloway has a very precise and very strict definition of the word rich.
He does.
And it has absolutely nothing to do with what you see on Instagram.
According to the text, equity equals wealth. Rich is not defined by making $1 million a year.
Not at all.
He talks about having friends in Manhattan who make between $1 and $3 million annually.
Which sounds incredibly rich.
It sounds rich.
Yeah.
But between private school tuitions, Hamptons houses, and massive lifestyle creep, they spend every single penny they make. By his mathematical definition, those people are poor.
Right. He defines being rich by a single metric. Your passive income is greater than your burn rate.
The burn rate.
Yeah. For anyone unfamiliar with the term, your burn rate is simply the monthly cost of keeping your life running. Your mortgage, your groceries, your bills.
Right.
If the money your investments make while you sleep covers your burn rate, you are rich.
He contrasts those Manhattan friends with his dad and stepmom. They live on $50,000 a year from pensions and Social Security, but their lifestyle only costs them $40,000 a year.
So their passive income exceeds their burn rate.
Exactly. They are the ones who are actually rich. It's a stark reminder to audit your own burn rate.
Absolutely.
But while we are on the topic of generating wealth, Galloway has some fascinating and rather harsh realities for anyone dreaming of entrepreneurship.
We live in an era where entrepreneurship is heavily romanticized. We tend to worship at the altar of the college dropout who becomes a billionaire.
Right.
But Galloway lays out a few brutal litmus tests for anyone thinking about starting a company. The first thing he asks is whether you can stomach signing the front of checks, not just the back.
Oh, man. Meaning, are you prepared to work 80 hours a week and then at the end of the month take money out of your own dwindling savings account to write a check to keep the company alive?
Exactly. Most people simply can't stomach that level of financial terror.
No.
The second test is your tolerance for public failure. If you perform poorly and get fired from a traditional corporate job, it's a private matter between you and HR.
But if you launch a startup and it dies, everyone you know watches it happen.
Everyone. And the third test is whether you actually like to sell.
Right.
He defines entrepreneurship as essentially a sales job with negative commissions until you either make it big or go bankrupt. You are constantly having to sell your vision to employees, investors, and customers.
He actually makes a really surprising admission here. He says that for many founders, including himself, entrepreneurship is actually a survival mechanism.
Yes.
It's often the path for people who simply lack the soft skills required to be a good employee.
It's true. Being a highly successful employee at a massive firm requires playing nice with others, skillfully navigating corporate politics, and suffering daily injustices gracefully.
Right.
He argues that if you have those skills, the risk-adjusted returns, meaning the financial upside compared to the chance of going broke, are actually much better as an employee.
He literally writes that he became an entrepreneur because he lacked the maturity and civility to just be an employee.
That takes self-awareness.
It really does. Now, whether you build your own company or you're just trying to navigate your investments, Galloway has some incredibly accurate and honestly hilarious soft metrics for spotting a market bubble.
He refers to these as the dead canaries in the coal mine.
Yeah.
They are the cultural indicators that a massive crash is imminent.
The first one is when CEOs go Hollywood.
I love this one.
This is when a corporate leader suddenly believes the world desperately needs to see them in fashion spreads. He points out Marissa Mayer getting a 3,000-word profile in Vogue and sponsoring the Met Ball with shareholder money right before things at Yahoo went south.
Or tech founders suddenly posing in Gap ads.
Yes, Gap ad.
Then there is what he calls the wardrobe malfunction. When a CEO starts wearing a black turtleneck on stage to deliberately channel Steve Jobs, it is almost always a massive red flag.
Oh, absolutely.
He meets that it usually signals the stock is about to tank or the FDA is about to raid their laboratories.
Elizabeth Holmes being a prime example of that one.
Precisely.
And the final indicator is the youth fetish. It's when society starts to worship youth over gray-haired experience.
Right.
When mediocre coders with 2 years of experience start demanding six-figure salaries and genuinely believe they are worth it. Or when venture capitalists hand billion-dollar valuations to 20-somethings simply because they are young and arrogant.
So if you are looking at the market and seeing these signs, what do you do?
Right. What's the play?
Galloway's advice is simple in theory but emotionally hard to execute. When the bubble is near, you diversify. You move to cash, what he refers to as mattress time, even if all the financial advisors are telling you it's foolish to pull out of a soaring market.
Mattress time.
And most importantly, you have to stay humble.
You have to recognize that macroeconomic dynamics always trump individual performance. If you're getting incredibly rich during a boom, it's probably not because you're an absolute genius.
It's just the tide lifting your boat.
Exactly. So what does this all mean for our actual day-to-day happiness? Let's get into the calculus of happiness and character.
Sociologists often describe a very predictable curve to human happiness, referred to as a smile graph.
A smile graph.
Right. In your teens and early 20s, life is generally about self-discovery, new experiences, and road trips. It's a magical time.
But then as you move from your late 20s through your mid-40s, things get highly stressful.
The curve dips significantly.
This is when life gets incredibly real. You have immense pressure at work, you have mortgages, you realize you might not achieve every wild dream you had, and the people you love start getting older and getting sick.
It's the absolute bottom of the curve.
Yeah.
But the reassuring news from the data is that the curve eventually goes back up. As you enter your 50s, happiness typically rises again.
You start to recognize and appreciate the blessings around you. your health, your family, the simple wonders of the world.
You finally begin to afford yourself the happiness you've earned.
But to get through that stressful dip in one piece, Galloway insists you have to make the right foundational choices.
Oh.
And he argues the most important career decision you will ever make isn't where you work or what industry you choose.
It is your spouse.
Your spouse.
A supportive partner softens the rough edges of life and dramatically magnifies your successes. And he offers a very practical, almost clinical formula for evaluating this partnership.
What's the formula?
It begins with physical attraction, which establishes the relationship as singular and intimate. But attraction isn't enough. You must also have deep alignment on your core values. Things like your views on religion, how you want to raise kids, and your proximity to your parents.
And crucially, you need alignment on money.
Yes.
Because financial stress is widely documented as the #1 cause of marital acrimony. You and your partner have to fundamentally agree on how money flows in and out of the household.
Now, regarding your daily habits, Galloway introduces a brilliant metric that listeners can apply immediately, the sweat to ESPN ratio.
Oh, this is so good. If you are listening to this right now, Galloway is essentially asking you to take a hard look at your calendar this past week.
Right.
The sweat to ESPN ratio is a forward-looking indicator of your future success. It is simply the ratio of the time you spend actually sweating compared to the time you spend sitting on the couch watching other people sweat on TV.
It's a profound metaphor for active participation in your own life versus passive consumption.
Exactly.
He argues that if you show him someone who watches sports every single night but never works out, he will show you a future filled with anger and failed relationships.
And on the darker side of consumption, the notes bring up the famous Harvard Grant study.
This is huge.
This was a comprehensive 75-year longitudinal study of men trying to determine what ultimately made them happy or unhappy over the course of their lives.
And the findings were incredibly clear. The #1 predictor of a man's unhappiness was alcohol.
Alcohol.
The study found it was a primary driver of failed careers, ruined marriages, and deteriorating health. Galloway himself admits in his notes that he used alcohol as a crutch early in his career to feel more confident and outgoing, before eventually realizing it was just making him a mediocre version of himself.
It's a sobering reminder to audit our own coping mechanisms. Which leads us to a broader theme. Galloway calls getting the easy stuff right.
Yes.
And this brings us to one of the most memorable stories in the source material. The viral NYU email.
This story is a perfect case study in the difference between mastering hard skills and mastering easy skills.
So picture the scene. Galloway is teaching a Monday night Rand strategy class at NYU Stern. A student walks into the classroom an entire hour late.
An hour late.
Galloway stops and kicks the student out of the room. Afterward, the student sends an incredibly entitled email complaining about the dismissal.
Unbelievable.
He explains that he was simply sampling 3 different classes that night, claimed he didn't know the policy, and expressed disappointment at being thrown out.
Galloway's written response to the student ended up going viral. He essentially told the student that he needed to get his act together.
Right.
He pointed out to the student that getting a high-paying job, navigating complex corporate politics, and keeping your technical skills relevant, those things are genuinely hard.
But respecting institutions, having basic manners, and simply showing up on time, that is the easy stuff.
The easy stuff.
Galloway's point is that if you don't get the easy stuff right, it will absolutely derail you, no matter how technically talented or brilliant you might be.
What's fascinating here is that despite his tough love persona and his obvious success, Galloway openly admits to struggling with profound imposter syndrome.
He highlights research showing that 70% of Americans feel like frauds at some point in their careers.
70%. He recounts a specific moment when he was receiving the Media for Liberty Award from the former CFO of Microsoft, Greg Maffei.
Wow.
Even while standing there receiving this prestigious award, he had a voice on his shoulder whispering, "Who are you kidding? You're a complete fraud."
It's incredibly relatable to realize that even the person standing at the podium feels like they are tricking everyone in the room. But he writes that he fights that feeling by remembering his roots.
Right.
And that leads to my absolute favorite story in this entire deep dive, the $200 Dean Witter story.
It is a beautiful story, and it perfectly encapsulates the power of taking risks and the profound impact of making someone feel visible.
So Galloway is 13 years old. He describes himself as feeling completely invisible. He's awkward, he has mediocre grades, and he's the son of a single working mom.
Right.
His mom is dating a generous guy named Randy, who gives the young Galloway 2 crisp $100 bills and tells him to go buy some stock.
Which is pretty cool.
Very cool. Galloway takes this money, hides it under an encyclopedia in his room, and the next day, he walks into a massive Merrill Lynch office. He just sits there in the lobby, a kid with $200, totally ignored by everyone, entirely invisible.
But the crucial detail is that he doesn't give up and go home. He walks across the street to a Dean Witter office.
Exactly. He walks in, nervously blurts out, "I have $200.
Yeah.
And instead of laughing at him or brushing him off, a young broker named Cy Cordner treats this 13-year-old kid with absolute respect.
He takes Galloway's money and puts it into a clear window envelope so the kid can see Ben Franklin's hair through the cellophane.
I love that detail.
He sits him down for 30 minutes, teaches him the basics of how the stock market works, and together they buy 13 shares of Columbia Pictures at 15 3/8.
That broker even allowed Galloway to call him every single day from a school phone booth using 2 dimes just to check the price of his stock.
Cy Cordner took 10 minutes out of his day to make a struggling 13-year-old kid feel visible and important.
The takeaway Galloway offers from this experience is deeply profound. Serendipity is a function of courage.
Courage.
You have to take risks, you have to subject yourself to the possibility of rejection like you faced at Merrill Lynch, and you have to put yourself out there to let the world surprise you.
And that really brings all of these seemingly disparate lessons full circle. We've examined the brutal math of wealth and burn rates, the harsh realities of market bubbles, the fundamental importance of getting the easy stuff right, and the courage it takes to invite serendipity into your life.
We really have covered a massive amount of ground today. So, for you listening, whether you're commuting or sitting at your desk, it's time to audit your own life.
What is your actual sweat to ESPN ratio this week?
Are you confusing the glamorous means of your career with the actual ends of your happiness?
And most importantly, are you getting the easy stuff right?
Knowledge is only valuable when it is applied.
And as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final lingering thought. It is drawn from a deeply poignant part of Galloway's notes that we haven't touched on yet.
All right.
Throughout our lives, we spend an enormous amount of time meticulously calculating the ROI, the return on investment of our careers, our real estate choices, and our stock portfolios. We plan obsessively for the beginning and the middle of our lives. But Galloway notes that one of the most profoundly satisfying things he ever did was temporarily move to a retirement community in Nevada for 7 months. He did it to ensure he could give his mother what he called a good death.
Wow.
It raises a vital and difficult question for all of us. What is the ROI of how we plan for the end? Are you investing the time and resources today to ensure you can provide grace, dignity, and comfort to the people you love when they inevitably take their final bow?
Wow. That is definitely something to mull over as you go about your day. Thank you so much for pulling up a chair and joining us on this deep dive. We love unpacking these sources with you. We can't wait to do it again next time. Take care of yourselves, and we'll catch you on the next one.